Hey there, listeners. This is Zoe. Just a quick note before we get into the podcast today. As I was editing, it appears that I did not choose the correct microphone for my audio for this episode. So I'm so sorry about that. You're not going to get the audio quality from me that you are used to, which you are hearing right now. But we had such a fabulous conversation. There's no way that I wasn't going to put this up just because I picked the wrong mic. But again, apologies. And hopefully next episode, you will hear my normal sound. Anyhow, on with the show. Hi, and welcome to Tea and Strumpets. I'm Zoe.
And I'm Kelsey.
And today we are joined by Mariana Fonseca. I just realized I didn't double check that pronunciation of your last name. Did I do it correctly?
You did it brilliantly.
Okay. And Mari is the creator for the very, very popular Julia Quinn Brazil social media channels. So thank you, Mari, so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I also want to thank you for joining us today. And why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit more about you and what you do in relation to Julia Quinn and Bridgerton fandom, but also just in your general life so we can get to know you better.
Right. So my name is Mariana. I am from Rio in Brazil. I'm currently living in England. I'm a doctor. So, I mean, it's been a struggle.
Yes. Thank you for everything.
Oh, well. So basically, I created Julia Quinn Brazil in 2013, I think. I've been reading Julia Quinn's novels since I was, 15, maybe. They weren't even published in Brazil yet back then.
Wow.
And I read them in English. They were the first romance novels I've ever read. And then I just fell in love with the whole genre and everything. And I didn't have anyone to talk about, because most of my friends didn't read them or, very few people read in English that I knew of. So I started, introducing my friends to the books and we talked about it. And then eventually I met a couple other people that had read it. So basically I created, it all started as a Facebook page in 2013. And it was actually my mistake because what I had in mind at the time actually was a group where we could, discuss in Portuguese about these books. But I didn't know we could create a Facebook group. So I created a page. And then actually I asked Julia's permission on her Facebook page if she was cool with me creating the Brazilian one. And she was so supportive. And that's how it all started. And I think it was the same year, I think a few months later, that they published The Duke and I.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
And then that's how it started to grow. And since then we started the Instagram account that actually I think now we're more active on Instagram and
that's
most
pretty,
of Instagram.
I think that most people are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Facebook is kind of dying off, I think. We still have a group. We created a group afterwards, and it's still very nice. I mean, I'm not that present in the group, so Talita.
Well, you're a little bit busy right now.
I am a bit busy, to be honest. So I've got two friends that help me with pages. I mean, I don't think it's even fair to say they help me. Like they basically run the accounts. I help them sometimes. They are Talita and Emanuele. Talita is a teacher, and Emanuele is a journalist.
Wow.
Yeah. So everyone's been pretty busy, but everyone helps out. And it's been chaotic since they announced the series. Like in 2019, we would wake up like super early just to check on all the actors' accounts and everything if we could catch a glimpse of something.
No, I am so impressed with all of the behind the scenes and all of the content that you guys create for the Julia Quinn Brazil channels. And I'm like so bummed that I don't know Portuguese because sometimes I'm like, well, but what is it? What are they? I want to know every detail. And I'm like, how do they have so much just like, I know the effort that it takes to put into creating, anything that you put out. And so like you guys are really getting like such great content and so much cool stuff and so many cool photos. You guys are really rocking it. So So great job there. And we'll talk more about their channels at the end too, and where you can find them and the names and all that stuff, because even if you don't speak Portuguese, you should be following it anyway. And am I correct that you guys also have a podcast about Bridgerton now too?
Yes, it started a few months ago. And it's called Tia number 5, but in Portuguese, it's called Chá no número 5. And basically, it started out as a Bridgerton podcast, but we've been talking about other Julia Quinn books as well, and other romance novels as well. We did like a top 5 tropes in romance novels that we liked and that sort of thing. So,
oh, awesome! I mean,
so much fun.
It sounds like what we do.
Yeah.
It's very, very simpatico there. But we invited you on because of all of the Julia Quinn Brazil stuff. I really wanted to find a Brazilian representative, shall we say, because Julia Quinn fandom in Brazil is just another like beast. So I wanted to let our listeners know that if they didn't know, like I've seen videos of Julia Quinn down there for signings, and it's kind of like she's like a member of the Beatles, and everyone is like screaming and very excited, and there's like thousands of people lined up, maybe hundreds, but still it looks like so many people. So I'd love to talk more about that towards the end of the episode. But right now, I mean, you've told us a little bit about your relationship with the Bridgerton books, but do you have a favorite book and or character, and who are they and why?
Tough question. I think I have a soft spot for The Viscount Who Loved Me because it was the first one I read. And the one that made me fall in love.
Such a good one.
But I think I have 2 other favorites. I think they're kind of like in the same level for me. It's The Viscount, What Happens in London, and The Sum of All Kisses. It's just, I love Hugh.
Awesome.
It's funny you mentioned What Happens in London, because as far as like after watching the Bridgerton series, I went back and I read The Secret Diaries of Miss Miranda Cheever, and then of course had to read What Happens in London.
As you do.
Yeah.
Oh, the life without a child. I remember those days when I could just read and then read another and read another. Oh, I do miss it. But I guess I like my kid. So, all right. Well, let's get into the episode that we are talking about today. The episode is number 5, The Duke and I. We're getting into this series. Kelsey, would you like to do the synopsis for us today?
I would love to. So we begin, and news of Daphne and Simon's engagement is broken by Lady Whistledown. Now, Prince Friedrich actually takes this quite gracefully and makes a very polite exit from the series. Bye, Friedrich. We loved you for that half a minute you were there. But Simon and Daphne's special marriage license request is denied by the Archbishop, throwing a wrench in the ongoing preparations, because the Queen is mad that Daphne didn't do things her way, because it was her idea to put Daphne and Prince Friedrich together. And she's like, ugh, this Bridgerton girl just totally dissed me. Now, Lady Danbury suggests that the couple appeal directly to the Queen and convince her of their love, because that should sway her. Simon makes a heady, sincere-sounding speech, and oh my gosh, it was a very good speech.
It was a very good speech.
It's a great speech. And the Queen gives them her blessing and grants them the special license for an immediate wedding. Also thinking of marriage is Marina, who is about to be wedded off to whoever will have her. And instead of just going along with that plan, she decides to seduce Colin, because she likes Colin well enough, and at least he's handsome and young and not old and decrepit. So she knows that Colin is an honorable gentleman, and so she knows he's an honorable gentleman and will do the right thing by her and marry her if he believes he has compromised her reputation. There's a whole thing about that, because Colin is a good gentleman and therefore won't compromise her. So anyway, she tells Penelope of her plan, and Penelope is quite upset at the idea of tricking Colin into a sham marriage. She tries to get Marina to understand that finding out the truth later would really kill Colin because he's such a good person. But Marina is selfishly looking out for herself and the welfare of her unborn child, which understandable. And so Penelope's appeals are completely ignored. Finally, Daphne and her Duke get married in an intimate ceremony. As their lavish wedding reception comes to an end, the Dowager Viscountess Bridgerton finds a private moment and gives Daphne the talk. Now, this goes rather unfortunately, but very importantly to the storyline, this is actually how it went in the book. There's a lot of hand waving and be like, oh, well, this is so awkward. You'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. And so Daphne leaves with the Duke, being very confused about what exactly the marital act entails, since her mother failed at actually explaining it to her. Also in this episode, we find out that the Featheringtons are in financial straits, and we learn more about Benedict Bridgerton as he enjoys a bohemian evening at an artist friend's house and discovers two men together, which seemingly sparks his interest. And lastly, we finish our episode with Daphne and Simon at the inn on their way to Cliveden. They are both wanting to join the other because they had separate rooms, and they do end up consummating the marriage with a quick kiss, and Simon directing Daphne to touch herself as this may hurt a bit. And push, pull out, after which Daphne tells the audience that she feels wonderful.
What a lucky lady.
I
know. Well, yeah, what an interesting episode with like a lot of things happening in it. These episodes are just so packed with all of these different storylines. Like, I can't believe that they fit it all in with an episode.
And it all works so well. I'm like, okay, I got it. I'm into it.
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting how in all the storylines, if you think about it, like there's an overarching theme of marriage. Because there's obviously Daphne and Simon, but also like we learn the truth about the Queen's marriage. We catch a little bit of a glimpse at of will analysis, domestic life.
Yes.
There's also the unusual marriage between the Granvilles, with Benedict finding out, and their open relationships, sort of.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting because like they're very different storylines, but in a way they kind of fit together in that theme within that episode.
Absolutely. I think the Featheringtons too, we start to see the dynamic of their marriage, right? The wife realizing things aren't working. And I believe this isn't the one where she actually, I think the next episode, she goes into his office and really goes through the accounts, but I can't remember if it was this one or that one. But she definitely realizes that they've got financial things going on, and you start to learn the dynamics of what a woman kind of can do in a marriage, in these times, and how that works. So I totally agree. I think we have to talk about the consummation scene. What did everyone think about that? I mean, I was the one who wrote this synopsis, so I think my feelings on it may be a little bit played into the way it was written. So what did you guys think? When you watched it the first time, how did you feel about it?
Well, it wasn't as memorable as all the scenes in the next episode, so there was that.
It's hard to complete.
Which I think says a lot. Like, it was very much like, it was kind of a description, but obviously you see that like Daphne's like, I know nothing about this. And Simon's like, okay, great. And then, we notice that he does pull out at the end. And,
I did ask my husband, I was like, could you tell that he pulled out, that that's what happened? And he was like, yeah, because I just wasn't sure, because I know the book, right? So I know that that's what he did, but I was like, is it clear to someone who has literally no idea the storyline? And he said it was.
That's interesting because you said that, because I also was kind of watching it and I know that's what he was doing. But in my head, I was kind of like, I wonder if anyone else will understand that. Because like, I know what's happening, but it's very much like, but I was also wondering how they were going to actually like do that visually anyway, because that's kind of a tricky thing to like do on screen visually without like, getting into some explicit things. So I thought, as well as like, I thought that was kind of like the best option for them to do that, like there wasn't another way they could have represented that.
Yeah, I think so. I think for me,
I want to read my notes because I took notes as I was like watching the series just to remember things, and so I feel like my notes here are a little funny. So first of all, I said, now we have a whole episode where we talk about the music of the show, but this is the moment where I really said, God, I'm so tired of the Vitamin String Quartet. Now that's my own opinion. I actually think that it was a smart choice for the show, but I just personally am tired of the Vitamin String Quartet. And then I also said, from seeing men on TV, this is literally where I imagined that men had no hair, which Simon has no hair anywhere. And so I was like, this is how I learned that men had no hair, except this is not true.
Yeah.
And then I wrote, oh my God, having Simon have her touch herself on a TV show, awesome, romance win. Like this is a good sex positive thing about a woman finding pleasure and a man thinking that's cool and sexy. I thought that was great. Then I said, WTF, the close butt shot, ha 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 ha. So when you see Simon's butt, which I just thought it was a funny shot. But then this is where I said, oh God, what a terrible way to lose your virginity. I'm in pain watching. I just really, like, to me, I was like, ow, oh, I just felt like it was a little bit fast. Everything was fast. There was like that moment of foreplay of like, touch yourself. And I know we can't have like, 10 minutes of sex. That's not what we're here for. This isn't a porno. Mm-hmm. But I also felt like it was so fast that it seemed a little painful. And were you guys into the moment? Were you guys feeling differently than me? Or did you think like, was it an escapist thing where you were like, oh, they're making love and I can think of it that way? Or did you also feel like me is what I'm curious about?
I thought it was okay. I mean, in terms of, now that you mention it, I kind of agree that it was like that, but it didn't occur to me when I was watching it. So I think what's, the most striking thing about it for me was that how unlike anything else I had ever seen on TV was, because I felt like I was reading a romance novel. It was exactly the same feeling as, like not just the way it was filmed, like very much the female gaze in it. There's a lot on Daphne's face and Daphne admiring Simon and like Simon kind of being objectified a little bit. And I love that. And also like, when he tells her like, oh, touch yourself. And she's like, oh, wait, what?
Yeah.
I can't do that. That's embarrassing. So a little bit of the awkwardness, but, so I really liked that because I had never seen anything like that before.
I suppose romance novels are the same way. You're totally right. Like it is a lot of virginity, like there's a little pinch and then they totally enjoy sex. And I think most women would say that's not their experience the first time.
My friends and I have had a very blatant conversation about how, like, as much as we love romance novels, like we do not find, I think it was because we read a romance novel and the woman basically was like, it was one of the few ones where like he made sure to get her off in the foreplay because she did not have her orgasm from the actual first time of sex. And I was like, that seems more correct. And so, but yeah, it was a bit rushed. And I think I remember I did feel more like a romance novel though, because at the same time too, you have the female gaze. I felt, for me, I felt more the awkwardness of it, like that first encounter. Like I felt that, and kind of like you don't normally see that in film, like they want it to be beautiful and lovely and exciting, and yet I was watching it and I was like, ooh, I feel a little awkwardness coming in, and I was like, but that's kind of your first time, so that's okay.
Well, and I think like that's what contemporarily written romance novels are good at. Like maybe, the 80s ones get a little bit like, rougher or, faster and less about kind of those awkward moments. But a lot of the authors I think that I love so much do put in more things that are relatable like that, especially books that are written today. Even The Duke and I was 21 years ago. I think it was like 23 or 24 that she actually wrote it, but then it was, published like 21 years ago now. Mm-hmm. It's very different in 2021 than 2000. So, but I totally agree with you guys that it felt like a romance novel. It's so cool to see that. on screen, even admits to be going like, you know, oh, that looks like it hurts.
Also, like, even romance novels, like when I read them, like I just reread Viscount, and it's a completely different book from the one I read when I was 15. Like, you know what I mean? Like, 'cause I changed so much, and I think our sensibilities changed a lot, and that's, you know, I'm not going to say how long it's been. It's been a while, but not that long. But it's just like some things, you're right, like they get it completely wrong. And I'm sure it's not for lack of knowledge, like Juliet's married to a doctor.
Yeah.
And then, so she knows, I mean, obviously like the experience of it as well. But I think it's just like kind of I don't know if there's this unspoken agreement within the genre of how you're gonna describe that. So, for example, there's a scene where Anthony is like he was already inside Kate, and it was like, when he reached her maidenhead, I'm like, that's really not how it is. Like, it doesn't work that way.
I know, that's written in so many ways. It's just like, and he felt the final barrier, and it's like,
exactly. And I'm like, there's no final barrier.
I don't think they feel that. Just gonna like play off that in the sense, because you mentioned rereading The Viscount Who Loved Me, and one thing that Zoe and I discovered rereading all the Bridgerton books, because it had been a long while for me, less of a while for Zoe, but still quite a bit of time. And rereading them just a second time, you know, we found bits of books that we don't remember liking, like Francesca's book. I had very vague memories of it. I had like very explicit ones, but then also very vague ones. And it was hands down one of our favorites. Like rereading it, but it's just because we're at a different place in our life, and you could just like, you know, feel that the emotion that was emitted, like that just came from that book. Oh, I mean, it had me in like tears, and I was just like, it just elicited all these feelings in me that I don't remember feeling the first time. But I was also in my like late teens, you know, I was in college. And, you know, now, you know, a decade later, it's a little bit different.
Absolutely. That's a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about next about this episode, because this is when I texted you, Kelsey, and I said, during the wedding scene, I said, where the hell is Francesca? She is not in this scene. And I was like, where is Francesca? She cannot be maximum more than 16, because Eloise is 17, right? Like she hasn't come out yet, right? So we know that. And I'm just like, why isn't Francesca here? And she wasn't in this episode. She wasn't in the next one. I think she's in the 8th one, but I'm not sure. So
I told Zoe, I was like, there's a big to do when she comes back. And there is something about her visiting an aunt, and I believe in Scotland. So
okay, well, I totally forgot that we weren't supposed to have spoilers in this part.
Anyway,
so
but it's
sorry,
not
everybody.
really a spoiler because it doesn't have anything to do with anything. I'm just saying, Zoe, you're going to find out, like, Francesca comes back and you're going to know it, and you're going to know where she was.
So let's speculate, though. Why is this part of the storyline? Why wasn't she just in the series hanging out at the house in the background?
I wonder if it's just because she's kind of viewed as like the quiet Bridgerton, especially even at the family dinner. Like she's there and she's quiet, and we know her as the quiet Bridgerton. She kind of feels like the black sheep of the Bridgerton family. Yeah. And we know that from the books. But then also at the family dinner, you know, we have Hyacinth and Gregory with their little childhood antics, and Eloise is just very outspoken. So I think omitting Francesca, there probably were scenes with her, and then they realized that they weren't really fitting in. And so then they say, oh, well, she went to go visit someone and then came back. And I wonder if it's just
Scotland. So
I think she was up in Scotland. So I think that might be why.
Her husband was Scottish in the books. Yeah. So are maybe they're setting up something for a later season because
That's what I'm wondering. Because there's a lot of setup in this series. If you've read the Bridgertons, and Mara, you and I can discuss this later, but there is a lot of substance for like next seasons, like
I know
all the seasons. And if you know all the Bridgerton things, there's these little like tidbits, and you would only know it if you've read the books. And it's just like, how are they going to play that out? I'm so interested.
So much fan service. I loved it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So
absolutely.
listeners, just so you know, I still haven't, behind the curtain here, I still haven't listened or watched the last episode. So when the ladies talk about the spoiler part later, then I'm going to duck out just because I still yes, I read the books, but I want to see how the series does it without having my thoughts too tampered. And I apologize that, I haven't watched it, but I have a 3-month-old. So that's my excuse.
I have a lot of respect for, your restraint. To go this far without watching it.
Well, to be honest, and I don't think I've talked about this yet in any of our episodes, I am very bad at TV. I will consistently drop series. I will never watch the last episode of a series, like an entire series. I'll get to the last 5 episodes and I'll be like, I am super upset about this. I'm over it. I can't even finish it, which is just irritating to most people. And I recognize that. But I am enjoying the Bridgerton series because it is something I love. But the thing is, I really want to get to enjoy it, and trying to watch it while nursing or, also watching the kid, I feel like I can't really give it the attention it deserves. So anyhow, that's my long reasoning.
Okay. I understand. I had to shoosh my husband at one point. And then he got mad at me and left. I was like, it's fine. I don't care. He was just asking a lot of questions. And I was like, I can explain it to you, but I'm trying to watch this.
So before we wrap up with our talking about the episode, I had a couple more things. Number one, in I think the first scene, Daphne is coming back and she's undressing and she takes off her zippered tall boots. Kelsey, did you catch that?
Oh, I did catch that. And I did. I actually turned to my husband and I was like, that's not period, because they don't have zipper. And he's like, oh, zippers weren't invented then. I was like, no, those would have been pull on. And those zippers did not exist. And I was like, that is a bad costuming right there.
So Kelsey and I are both equestrians. So we, especially the horse details, we're all over. And the fact that she had zipper tall boots, I was like, yes, girl, they're so much easier to put on. But
zippered tall boots weren't even a thing until not even 20 years ago. Zippered tall boots weren't a thing 20 years ago.
We are not the historical accuracy police at all here. But that one seemed a little egregious.
Yeah, that one was a big.
It seemed like a continuity error. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Rather than just because it makes way more sense for wardrobe to use those, but
they would have to film that. I mean, they could just show the boot on the floor as in she's already removed it.
They could have even had them zipped up and displayed differently, and you would never have known they were zippered.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the zipper's on the inside. So it's just, anyhow, regardless, I could talk about Daphne's riding habit, the blue one, all day, but I already did that in the costume episode.
Oh, wow.
So beautiful. But I wanted to just mention that little moment. But then the other thing was I did want to talk about Benedict, because his storyline gets quite interesting. I've seen a lot of love for Colin. I've seen a lot of love for Anthony, but I'm going to be honest, I'm in love with Benedict Bridgerton.
Me too. I'm almost more in love with Benedict Bridgerton from the series more than the book. I know you have
100% more in love with series Benedict than book Benedict.
Yeah, and Zoe had much stronger feelings about Benedict's book than I did. I thought it was very good. We can talk about that. Oh, good. Excellent. I love it. But I love series Benedict because he's just you can get some more dynamic out of him. You see him kind of exploring himself. And I love his dynamic with Eloise. Oh, I know. The sister-brother dynamic is so great. I love it.
So good. So good. Well, and I think everybody got up in arms when Kate wasn't cast, right? Because Kate must be with Anthony. I'm sure all three of us feel very strongly about that. And y'all can talk about that, in the second half. But I feel like they're definitely doing some different stuff with Benedict. I think they're definitely saying, is he gay? Is he bi? Is he going to follow, and I don't know what love story they're going to give him. And I also don't care. I am so for whatever they do with him, even though I loved Benedict and Sophie's story. I think that Cinderella story is like a brilliant Cinderella story. I think Benedict's not my favorite, but Sophie, it's Sophie, right? All of a sudden I'm having a moment. Mom brain. But Sophie, I really love. And just the Araminta is like this absolute great evil stepmother. She's such a perfect evil villain. I love her. And then of course, Posey, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of great characters in there, but I just like, that can be my lovely little book that I love. I want Show Bridgerton to like spread his wings and discover everything life has to offer.
Yes, me too. Absolutely.
I am 100% pro gay Benedict or bi Benedict or queer Benedict, whatever. Just
alternative. Living his own life, Benedict, into it.
We talked about this, I think, in one of our podcast episodes, but like, there's a feeling like, not completely, but they shifted Benedict and Colin in a way in the series. Because like in the book, Benedict is kind of, he doesn't show up that much in his siblings' books. And Colin is the one that's more, he's the funny one and the charming one. And he kind of, steals the show a little bit. Well, in the series, it's the other way around. Like Colin's more like romantic, naive, and, doesn't appear as much. While Benedict kind of steals the show. So I thought that was interesting for them to do, and I'm all for it. But yeah, I was kind of disappointed that they didn't show in the series Colin's and Daphne's relationship so much.
Yes.
They're quite close in the book.
They had one scene that I started getting excited for, but I completely agree.
Yeah, I was like a little sad that there wasn't more like Bridgerton sibling interaction, because that's part of my favorite parts of reading the book. But I understand that could be a series unto itself. So,
well, and hopefully in subsequent seasons we'll see more and more and more, because you get some of it in Daphne's book, but you get more of it as in Anthony's book and Colin's book and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So Anthony's book especially. So
yeah.
Well, we keep alluding to, talking about all the spoilers and the full stuff. So shall we adjourn to the parlor and come back and do that afterwards?
We shall. Well, we cannot wait to talk more Bridgerton. We wanted to come back to this century to share with you a new contemporary rom-com called Hopeless Romantic that is sure to delight.
Author Mariana Adair is a #1 nationally bestselling author with over 1 million books sold. Hopeless Romantic, her second When in Rome novel, delivers the upbeat fun of a rom-com and the more serious issues women's lit tackles, such as blended families and neurodiversity. As an added bonus for animal lovers, it also features an English bulldog named Diesel, as well as an emotional support chicken named Gregory Peck. Oh my God, I love that so much.
I know. I knew you'd love the emotional support chicken.
Yes.
Also, Marina's St. Helena Vineyard series was the inspiration for a series of Hallmark Channel movies, Autumn in the Vineyard, Summer in the Vineyard, and Valentine in the Vineyard, starring 90s icon Rachel Lee Cook. So, they're prime rom-coms.
Yes. Oh my gosh. She's All That is like, it's so dated, but also so fabulous. Well, Jill Shalvis proclaims, with a beautifully layered plot, a unique cast of characters, and tears, Romantically Challenged is sure to touch your heart. Mariana Adair just keeps getting better.
So, as caregiver for her autistic brother, Beckett Hayes knows how meaningful a little extra help can be when life happens, which is why she runs Consider It Done, a personal concierge service in her small town. Her job also gives her the flexibility to follow her passion, being Rome, Rhode Island's unofficial special needs advocate, training emotional support companions in her spare time. There's not much time for that, though, and certainly not enough for serious dating. It's always been family first for Beck. But one unquestionably gorgeous, good-natured man is suddenly a temptation that's getting tougher to resist. 16 years ago, Levi Rhodes was ready to sail off into the sunset, literally. But then his father's death and his sister's unexpected pregnancy postponed his sailing scholarship and the adventures he had planned. Running the family marina and bar was the least he could do for his grieving mother. Plus, his niece needed a father figure. But now that she's in high school and her biological father is in her life, Levi's wondering if it's time to get his sea legs under him again. Or he was wondering until curvy, carrying Beck showed up in his bar and then in his dream. Sounds like a perfect seaside romance to me.
Marina also wants it to be known that she is going to be donating part of her proceeds from Hopeless Romantic to OAR, the Organization for Autism Research. This is a cause very near and dear to her heart, as she is the mother of an autistic child. And the heroine of this novel is the caregiver for her autistic brother.
So if you'd like to check out Hopeless Romantic, you can find a link to it in our show notes.
Yes. And today we also have some listener mail. So listener Lark reached out to us in response to our 2021 releases episode, and they said, "Dear Kelsey and Zoe, you left out the February 9th release that I'm most looking forward to, Wild Rain by Beverly Jenkins. I'm also looking forward to Julianne Long's newest Palace of Rogues novels, I'm Only Wicked with You, and Sabrina Jeffrey's Undercover Duke. That comes out on May 25th. Then there's Someone to Cherish, the 8th Westcott romance by Mary Ballou. That is June 29th. She says, just in case we need any more ideas. And I think this must have come in right after our first episode, but before our second episode, because I believe we included Mary Ballou's the 8th Westcott romance. And I think we definitely included I'm Only Wicked with You by Julianne Long, but we did not catch Sabrina Jeffrey's Undercover Duke.
Which is such a shame because I'm very much looking forward to it.
And you know what? We also missed another really big one. And I'm just like killing myself for this. We forgot Olivia Waite's release that comes after the Waspish Widows, which is called, I believe, The Hellion's Waltz. It's a female about the piano tuner, and I can't remember the second profession. I'm just literally like smacking myself in the head. Like, I'm so excited for that.
This year is going to be such a great year of books. I mean, already so many great ones have come out, and there's just so many to look forward to. So thank you, Lark, for helping us catch some that we missed.
Yeah, and generally our list, kind of was staying on this side of the pond, and Beverly Jenkins writes, American historical romance. And so that is one of the reasons why she's not on there, but she's an icon and her books are fabulous. And I've only heard like really stunning things about Wild Rain now, because it is post February 9th that we're recording this. So I'm really excited to pick it up myself.
So thank you, Lark, again, for helping us catch some that we miss. And just to follow up on our lovely Bridgerton recaps, if you would like to interact with us about them on social media, please be sure to use the hashtag BBEE MyBridgerton.
And to get in touch with us about this or any other episode, you can email us at romancepod@gmail.com.
And you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at T as in Tom, N as in Nancy, Strumpets, on Facebook /T and Strumpets, or on YouTube by searching our name.
And speaking of YouTube, if you guys would like to subscribe to us on YouTube, that would be super helpful. We need to get to a certain number threshold of subscribers before we get some other features on our YouTube channel. And we're about halfway there. So if you are a YouTube user, even if you don't listen to us on YouTube, we would be most grateful if you would just click that subscribe button, because that'll help us get closer to our goal. And something that's also very cool about YouTube is that you can really interact with us on the comments. You can, leave a comment about a specific minute and second within the podcast. I think if you pause it, there's like a feature to do that, because a lot of our listeners on YouTube have been doing that. And that's really cool. We know exactly what you're referencing and we can respond directly to that. So that's a way to really become involved in the conversation. And we love hearing what you guys have to say.
Absolutely. In fact, we'd be honored if you could leave us a review. Reviews on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, or wherever else you can review us really help other listeners find the show. So, of course, you can also just tell a friend.
We so appreciate any referrals and reviews.
So now that we're back, I know I said I was going to be gone, but before we get into the full series discussion, I wanted to talk to you, Mari, a little bit about Julia Quinn fandom in Brazil. So like I said in the beginning, I've seen some videos where it's like she's been there for a book signing and there are screaming, adoring fans like she was one of the Beatles. I mean, have you been to these things? Is that what it's really like? Am I crazy?
It is what it's really like, to be honest. I mean,
That's the most amazing thing.
In general, we are quite intense, if I can put it that way.
Yes.
And I mean, we do love it. I mean, obviously Julia is great, but it's not just about her. Like, fans in Brazil, I think in general are quite intense. And, and we don't, I think maybe in the US, you have lots of book signings with these authors. And so, I think it's not that people don't care, but maybe, it's not such a big thing. Mm-hmm. Well, nobody, it's quite rare for someone to go to Brazil. And when they do, it's usually like to São Paulo or, Rio, like just the big cities. But like the first time Julia went to Brazil, she went to Manaus. She did signings in like quite unusual cities. So that was great. And then like she said it herself, I think, in an interview that when she went to Manaus, she was like, oh my God, I felt like a rock star. And then people were in the queue and they were like, oh my God, you came here. Nobody ever comes here.
That is, I mean, Julia is just like a treasure. I really find her to be a really sweet, delightful human. I say as if I've met her. I have not. But she just seems that way. And she's so caring, I think, of her fans. And I don't know, it's really awesome to love something and have the creator love something and feel like the creator also loves that you love it.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, she's been to Brazil twice. She's done the first, I think was I can't remember, like 2016 maybe? Can't remember. And then a couple of years later, when they published the Smith books.
Wow.
Yeah, they did a beautiful, like, it's like this box set with, very, very nice. Mm. And she went there for the signings and she's always been great. She's really, warm, and she really, even like lots of people don't speak in English, but, they try to communicate with her. And I think she's really great with that. Even, she recognizes people are struggling, but she's still, I think we communicate on a higher level than language.
There you go.
Yes. It's called fandom. We communicate through fandom. So then you started these channels. You told us a little bit about that, but they grew extremely large, pretty quickly. What was that like? Or was it quickly?
So when I first started it in 2013, there wasn't that big of a fandom, obviously. Like, I was quite impressed when we reached like 100 followers on Facebook. But then after they published the books in Brazil, they were quite successful. And that kind of opened the market for more romance novels and other authors like Tessa Dare, Sarah McLean, and Eloisa James that were published afterwards. So that was the first, when it first started to grow. And then, but after they announced the series, that's when, things really blew over. And there were lots of other, because for a very long time, we were not the only one, but like, I think major one, sort of channel for fans in Brazil. But then when they announced the series, that like there's loads of Instagram and probably Facebook and etc. Channels as well, which is great. I think it's great that the fandom is so big, and it's but I think most of them are focused on Bridgerton, on the series. While our approach was always like, obviously we are covering Bridgerton, but it's like the whole of Julia Quinn's books. So yeah. But yeah, I mean, it really grew quite quickly after they announced the show, and specifically after Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been we've seen an uptick as well, because our show is Regency romance, and when we thought of this show, we were talking about it, and then we hadn't started it yet. before they announced that they were going to do a Bridgerton show. But then they did while we were in the planning stages, and we were like, oh, how perfect. That's going to be a great thing to be able to talk about too. So we did, we do books and interviews with authors, but then of course we cover Bridgerton too. But what I'm really hopeful is that all of this love for Bridgerton will translate to just, a different conversation about romance novels and about the romance genre and about, and also more Regency romance fans. And dare I say, more diversity in Regency romance?
Hopefully. Yeah, no, it's something great because I even listen to other podcasts and
you listen to other podcasts, traitor.
I know, right? How dare I? But I listen to them sometimes and I hear them talk about they like have mentioned romance novels and it's never in like a very positive way. And I'm like, ugh. And then now I hear those same hosts that are talking about, have you watched Bridgerton yet? Like Bridgerton. And I was like, yeah, romance novels, yo.
It's really funny because like even a few years ago, I remember when I would recommend the books to some people. Like I even was part of a book club for a while, and I proposed that we discussed, one of the Bridgerton books, and everyone kind of, looked down on them and like, what's to discuss about these? There's not that much, and etc. And like I see the same people now, that the show's so successful and it's such a big thing. They're like, oh my God, and there's so much to it, and they go into this whole analysis of this. I'm like, oh, nothing to discuss about these then. Funny.
Yeah, I would say there's plenty to discuss as we have done that.
Yeah, as we do all the discussions.
We certainly do. We do. And we always have to cut ourselves off because it's like, well, we could talk about this all day. And on that note, how about we let you guys discuss the overall series and I will duck out for a minute and then I will come back for our goodbyes.
Okay.
Cool.
See ya.
Okay, yes. So overall series, how did you feel as a very big Bridgerton fan? How did you feel about the series as a whole?
I mean, to be honest, I think in general, my expectations were quite high and it exceeded my expectations.
Excellent. I felt the same way. You kind of come in with like high expectations, but I was also a little nervous,
Yeah.
Wasn't quite sure how it was going to play out, but But the series itself, like I really liked the characters they produced, and even some of the characters that we were introduced into the series that didn't really play any part in the book, or maybe just a small part of the book. So, how do you feel kind of about those extra characters and those extra storylines?
I just loved it. I think it was really, really something how they managed to create this, because obviously, like, the way the book's translated to screen, I mean, it's a different language, so obviously they're going to change those things.
Yeah.
And like, for example, the whole thing with Francesca, for example, like, it was much easier just to, not ignore her, but like not to give her a storyline in the book, because then in the show just have this, person there. So I think they did a brilliant job, like, making Mariana the Featherington's cousin and just, already kind of given us a glimpse of Eloise's future story.
I know. Did you, when they finally tied that all together at the end, because she was like, Sir George, and then they're like, oh, this is his brother, Sir Philip Crane. I was like, oh!
Yeah, I know.
That's gonna work later on.
I know. I mean, I think they just did a brilliant job. I mean, I have obviously some criticism. There were some things I didn't like so much, but in general,
tell me about those. Tell me about those too.
So the girls don't really agree with me. I'm kind of, the minority in here, but I have a few problems with Anthony in the show.
Oh, okay. I get it. He's a major dick.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's fine because like he's a major dick in the book as well, in the first book.
Yes.
I mean, to Daphne and such. So I didn't have a problem so much in a way that as relating to Daphne and Simon. My big problem was his relationship with Sienna. And not so much because there is a relationship, like most people that were, upset because there's no Kate, and he's got to be faithful to Kate even though she doesn't even exist in the show. Yeah, but
No,
anyway.
we know he was a rake before he met Kate. It's why Kate has a problem with him.
Exactly. But my problem is, because obviously in the book, she didn't have such a deep attachment to Sienna, or she was just like one of the women he had, affairs with.
Yeah.
But I think, and my impression from, the trailer and, everything that they, had sort of showed us earlier, I thought their relationship would be more like a friendship with benefits in a way. And in the show, it was deeper than that. And it kind of, and I think he was a major dick to her. And I felt that wasn't Anthony. Like, he was a rake, but he wasn't a dick. To women.
Yeah, no, I did think that was really interesting because, like, he was like, oh, I got to break this off. We're like, and she broke it off a little bit with him. And then it just kind of kept coming back around. And I was like, this is a level of obsession that I don't quite understand why they did it with Anthony's character. Exactly. Like, I figured it'd be much more cordial because she's like, I'm aware I'm an opera singer and you're a Viscount. Like, you're going to have to marry someone else one day. I'm not jaded in that sense, Yeah. And even at some point in the series, she even said, she's like, I don't want to have to go to balls and like explain my presence. Like, I'm happy with my life the way it is, but you need to be okay with that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't quite understand. Although I thought it did answer a very good question, which I think was a little bit different because then you see him really questioning whether or not he wants to be the Viscount.
So that was another problem I had, because in the book, there's no way Anthony's going to question that.
Like, no. He knows he's the Viscount, and he's a dick because he's looking out for his siblings. Exactly. Not just because he's an ass.
He's so obsessed with, being as close as possible to his father's standards. He's like, I'm never going to be as great as my dad, but I'm going to be the best I possibly can. And that's the whole issue with him, like trying to, deal with that. But he's very caring for his family and in his role. And that's the most important thing in life for him. And that doesn't seem to be a struggle for him in the book. But in the show, they gave us this sort of like this escapism that he was kind of after, like with Sienna, as in like when he kind of flirts with the idea of, killing Simon and having to run away with her. And like, this is not Anthony.
Yeah, no, that's not Anthony. Like, he had to call out Simon, because honor. But yeah, you're right. Like this whole, like, we're going to use it as an opportunity to run away together and like live our lives together. I didn't quite understand. Yeah, that was kind of interesting for me, especially since I'm interested to see how it plays out with him in the future. But I wonder if maybe because, especially like to US audiences, how casual relationships like happen all the time in movies and things like that. I wonder if they were just trying to put it in because, like, I know there's a scene where when Kate and Anthony end up in the library together, it's because Kate is following him when he like meets with the singer, and she's like, I know you had an affair with her, and I know she was your previous mistress. What are you doing with her if you want to marry my sister, And I wonder if the reason they played on that is because they wanted to make it more of a big deal for him to be seen with her in the future, or maybe like that idea of like a shift. I don't know. I'm speculating here because I also love Anthony, and like everyone's like, oh, Anthony is such a jerk, and I'm like, oh, but his redemption is so good.
I know. Like, every single one of my friends that haven't read the books but watched the shows, they were like, we hate Anthony, and I'm like, no,
you can't hate Anthony. He's so great.
I know. I think they made the thing with Sienna bigger than it was, is basically to give him
more to
storyline. Yeah. Because it wouldn't work so much for him just to be the antagonist to Daphne and Simon's story. And I think it made sense in a way if you just consider the show as a separate thing. I think the arch makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested in how they're going to play that in the second series. I do hope they keep Sienna and show us a little bit more about her character, because I really liked her and I really, want to know more about this. I mean, not just her, but the modiste as well, Genevieve.
Yeah.
I would love to know more about their lives, and I would hope that they, would dive a little bit deeper into the lives of the people that were not in aristocracy, the common people. And yeah, so that's something I'm interested and hopeful that they will develop in later series.
Absolutely agreed. So I'm really interested to see that. Anything else you want to talk about with the series that's been on your chest?
I think Eloise's feminist awakening was so great.
Oh, so great. Oh, and I love the act of like figuring out like where babies come from. And it's so true to Eloise, because even like in her book, he's like, well, do you know about like what happens between a man and a woman? She's like, oh yeah, my sister Francesca and I bribed a maid because our mom sure wasn't going to tell us.
No, I think because it's something that obviously they did to kind of make the show more in tune with, the current climate and with the current audiences. But it made so much sense because it was so true to her character.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I will say this, like this episode especially, because I love Penelope. And in this episode and kind of into the next one, I kind of was like, Penelope.
Yeah, I'm not that big of a fan of what they did with Penelope in the first series, to be honest.
Yeah.
I love the actress. I love Nicole.
Oh, no, she did a great job. Like, no, she did an absolutely great job. And I love the dynamic between her and Eloise. And like, but I just felt that, they kind of made her, she just was a bit childish to me versus like the Penelope in the book has never really acted childish.
Yeah. And I think the thing that really bugged me was that, the big revelation in the last chapter. I was a bit kind of hopeful that I was quite surprised that they did that.
Yeah, I was hoping there'd be a bit more mystery involved, like at least for a couple more seasons.
Yeah. But I think the thing that really upset me was that when she published about Mariana, because I felt like Penelope would never do that.
No, because that, like I said, that was childish. Like
that was very cruel and very selfish.
Cruel. Yeah, it was selfish and cruel and childish, and And
I understand where she's coming from. Obviously, she is really suffering and trying to fight with whatever weapons she had. I get that, but I didn't feel like that was true to her character. So I thought maybe they would delay the revelation a little bit, sort of like, for the public to forget about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. No. Very interesting. And same thing though, we mentioned how like in the books Colin was a much bigger presence, and in this he's kind of like naive and romantic. That was something I wasn't like, I wanted goofy funny Colin, but like it just was very like, I liked the actor, but I also like see like for me like him going after Marina in the first place wasn't really in tune with Colin's character at all, because he was the man who danced with all the wallflowers because his mom told him to, know, and that's partly why Penelope really likes him, is because he sees the wallflowers and he gets to know them, and he wasn't the one who would be so drawn to like the prettiest girl in the room. So I don't know. I did love it though. Like you said, I've taken it separate from the books. I can use it as a comparison, but it doesn't, even these things that I'm talking about, like it doesn't detract from the fact that the series itself was really good. And I thought it was such a good representation of like what romance novels can be and should be. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. But yeah, I kind of missed, understanding why Penelope liked Colin.
She's just like the neighbor who's obsessed with him because it's her friend's older brother. And it's like, no, she likes Colin because like Colin sees her. Yeah.
Well, in the book, that makes much more sense. Like everyone's a little bit in love with Colin, and everyone is.
Yeah.
in the show, it's just like he's one of the brothers. Like he's the romantic, naive brother. That's it.
Yeah. Like we said, Benedict Bridgerton's really like pulling a solid right there for all of us. Okay, I'm going to let Zoe know she can come back. You missed a great one. We had a lot to talk about.
I know. I'm so sad that I still haven't watched the episode. It's going to be funny because I'm going to have watched the episode before we record like the first episode in this series. So it's going to be like all of a sudden like 5 episodes in, Zoe leaves the conversation. But
Gosh,
hey,
the magic of podcasting in real time and scheduling.
We'll just have to get another call just, to discuss things after Zoe sees the last episode.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait to do that because I'm going to have to gush. Like it's been really fun to gush about each episode. But I just, I want to gush about the whole
really
thing.
Good because she doesn't just text me all the time with the episodes. Because I know I knew she was watching it and she hadn't finished it yet. So I was like, restrain yourself, Kelsey. Zoe doesn't know what's happening, and you have to talk about it on the podcast anyway.
I know. We're pretty good about that. We try that with books that we read too. Like we try not to talk to each other before we record the episode, just because then it's like a little bit more, genuine. I don't know. Anyhow.
Sometimes it doesn't work though, because we're very opinionated.
Seriously. Well, it's been such a delight to have you here with us, Mari. We appreciate it so much. And we hope it gave our listeners a little bit of an insight into like Julia Quinn's Brazilian, different life kind of that she has, because I feel like there is just this obviously there's an absolute love for Julia here in the States. But like you said, the fandom is just a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I love that we get to share it from like all over the world. Like this is so exciting.
I know. I just love how romance brings people together. I mean, that's my favorite thing. It's brought some of my best friends, I love it.
Yeah, it's really, I obviously shared books with people that I think are going to like them and books with people that I think aren't going to like them, but I do it anyway. But I've had friends and family members come to me about Bridgerton, the series, and, say things. And it's like you said, it's been really exciting because now all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can relate to this more than I could before. And hopefully they'll be, excited to pick up a book too one day. So Mari, again, we're so thrilled that you were able to join us. Where can people find you and where can they find all of the Julia Quinn Brazil things?
So we are on Twitter and Instagram as @Lady without the A, just LDY Whistledown.
Easy enough to remember.
And we are on Facebook as Julia Quinn Brazil. And we've got our podcast. It's Chá no Número 5 in Portuguese, I'm afraid. But for any Portuguese speakers listening to us.
Yes. And or if you want to learn Portuguese, I saw that Tessa Dare has started Duolingo Portuguese. So
awesome. Yeah, there's one thing I'm going to say about Brazilians. We make the best memes.
Yes, I saw that thread on Twitter the other day. Tessa was like, can someone please explain this meme to me? It was so great. So, Mari, thank you so much. We're going to have you back on one of these days to talk other books because I have a feeling we're very similar in all of these things. It just felt like so fun to chat and to talk books. And we're just so grateful you were able to join us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Really, it's been my pleasure. And just call me other times and I'll come.
Perfect.
Yay. All right. And thank you to you listeners all again for listening. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram @T as in Tom, N as in Nancy Strumpets, and Facebook /TN Strumpets, YouTube by searching our name. And we're going to be back next time, not even a week from now, but in a few days with episode 6 of the Bridgerton series. So join us all again for that episode soon.
And may all your ever afters end happily.
Tea and
Strumpets is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts.
Also thinking of marriage is Mariana. To escape from being wedded off to whoever will have her, she comes up with a plan to seduce Colin.
Marina. I
Yeah.
wrote
Marina.
Mariana because
I was like, how do I fit
I
in?
was like, wow, I didn't know I was in the series.
oh, sorry about that.
Okay, take that again.